Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Robin Lee.
Start. Morning. Hope you've had a good one.
We'll talk about that later.
Okay, sure. Okay, you all set?
Yeah, I think so.
Perfect. Right.
Yeah, shall we get...
Yeah, I'll do a little hello and intro, and then I'll switch over to you.
Okay, great.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Today, we've invited Riason Naidoo to talk on his recent publication based on the Any Given Sunday project. And this took form of public artistic interventions in 2016, the traces of which actually form part of an exhibition currently on show with us at the Buhle Museum. Now, to give you a bit of background, Riason Naidoo is an independent curator. He's currently based in Paris, and he's also a writer, a researcher, and an artist with a modern and contemporary art focus. Hailing from Durban, Naidoo graduated with a BA and MA in Fine Arts from Wits University in Johannesburg. And some of his major exhibitions he curated includes exhibitions such as Midday in the Parisian suburb of Saint-Denis, as well as Any Given Sunday, of course, 1910 to 2010, from Pithouse to Buhle, which was at the South African National Gallery and Museum. And then also the Indian and Drum magazine in the 1950s. He also curated exhibitions on artist Peter Clark. That particular exhibition is shown in Dakar, London, and Paris, as well as on the photographer Ranjit Kali, whose work showed in Durban, Johannesburg, Cape Town, Bamako, Saint-Denis, Reunion Island, Vienna, and Barcelona. He was co-curator of the 10th edition of the Dakar Biennale in 2012 and director of the South African National Gallery from 2009 to 2015. Naidoo was also director of the Timbuktu Manuscripts Project, managed artistic projects at the French Institute of South Africa, as well as taught drawing and painting at Wits University, and he was in charge of art education at the Durban Gallery. Sounds like he did that all at the same time. Sorry, that was all at different times, but yes. Those are some of the projects he was involved in. Now, Riason, your exhibitions have often highlighted overlooked South African and African art histories. And this is why also I felt it important to note some of your background here, which is quite extensive in what I've said, but I think it really it situates you, the type of projects and the very particular type of curator and creator that you are. So without further ado, Riason, could you take us through Any Given Sunday, or AGS as we call it, and how the publication came to fruition?
Thank you very much, Robin. First, I want to thank you and the Rupert Museum for collaborating with me on Any Given Sunday. It has been a real pleasure working with you and your team and the Rupert Museum. It's been a great support to see the project have an extended run, and for the first time in a museum. And there's been a lot of interest because of it showing at the Rupert Museum. And I think a lot of people are still going to come to see it before the end of February. The Cape Town Art Fair has also expressed some interest. So the publication will also be launched at the Cape Town Art Fair during the 4 days. And so a lot of people, I think, are going to come to the museum after that. And I must congratulate you as well for all the events that you linked with Madusini and I think Garth Erasmus today.
Yes, correct.
So it's great to see these artists also link up with the exhibition and have other performances in their own careers. So that's also been great for them. And I must also thank all the artists for, generously lending the works to the show, because the Any Given Sunday show was just meant to be in the streets, and the artists have really, you know, without the artists, there wouldn't be a show. So thanks to them as well. So just to, maybe what I'll do is share my screen.
Sure.
And let me see, okay. So I have prepared a presentation, which I started last night and completed this morning. Okay. And because it's the first time I'm actually talking about the publication. But I think what you mentioned about, you know, me curating a particular type of exhibition is quite true. And that's got a lot to do with my own background, you know, growing up in a township in Durban, you know, coming from a working class background, and my parents not being familiar with art, you know, also my extended community, family, friends, and the larger community that I came from in Durban. So this has informed a lot of my practice, and Any Given Sunday goes back to many of these issues that I was dealing with as an artist, and then following that in my curatorial career. In fact, I've selected a few images also from my own practice, which you may not have seen before. So maybe this will be a first time for you as well. Just to say that Any Given Sunday has a Facebook page, which is Any Given Sunday Cape Town. So there's a lot of videos and photos from the performances in 2016 that are posted on there. And also some of the talks that were done around the world in Sweden and Dubai, etc. There, you know, Venice. There, some of those photos from those events are posted on the Facebook page, Any Given Sunday Cape Town. And I should say that Any Given Sunday was part of a larger project called Draft. And I was invited to curate the South African part of the project. And you can see on the left of your screen, these were the 9 cities that were involved in the project. And there was a curator from each of those cities that curated a kind of public art intervention. And we were all invited to Mumbai in 2015, June 2015. And then we were invited to Zurich in July 2016. And during that time, we were given a budget with which to create a project. And that's how I developed Any Given Sunday during those 12 months, and presented it in Zurich in 2016. And you can see the website over here. If you go to the Any Given Sunday page, you can click on Cape Town. It'll take you to the Any Given Sunday page on the Draft project. And there as well, you've got all the interventions, all the videos. The publication will also be uploaded there, so that anyone who wants to have a digital copy will be able to download it from this website as well. But thanks for the opportunity to talk about the publication. I think it's also important just to, you know, take you through the publication. It's been a long time in the talking and in the making. And I'll just take you through it quite briefly, because I think we only have an hour before you have Gartha Rasmus in the museum.
Yes, correct.
Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'll leave a bit of time at the end for some questions and responses. But, you know, just opening the pages, we can, the map is quite important, but it explains that any given Sunday is part of draft. There's the acknowledgements, but the map is quite key here because we get a sense of where these interventions took place. Gerald Machona in Alces River, Buhle in INKhayelitsha, Koleka Putuma on a train to Muizenberg from the city, Madusini and Gabriel Goliath in 2 different venues in Langa, Zanele Maholi around the Cape Town railway station, Stembile Mesizane in the company's garden, and Burning Museum in Bogues. And then we have the Aesop twins, Hassan and Hussein, whose performance took place. In fact, it took place around Cape Town, but landed up in Sea Point. And we have a number of essays, invited essays by Richard Pithouse, Jay Pather, Anthony Bogues, who's professor at Brown University, Thuli Gamedze, who's an independent writer and creative, and Uzma Rizvi is also an associate professor at Pratt Institute in New York. There we get a clearer picture of where these interventions took place. And you can see it's quite widespread around the Cape, so not just Cape Town. And this was really part of the intention of the series, was to draw on a wider audience than just the art-going public, and to use the Cape as a kind of canvas. So not just the center of Cape Town City, but the areas around it, the townships around it. And for many of these performances, for example, with Siwani, she chose INKhayelitsha. And so, it was often a discussion with the artists. Sometimes I proposed an idea, sometimes the artist proposed an idea. For Gabriel Goliath's performance, I said it would be great to do it in a church in the township, and she said she always wanted to do that, and that's how we, I actually looked for this church in Langa, and we met there, and then we started talking to the people from the church to organize the performance. But I'll talk a little bit more as we go through. So there's 6 essays on the project, and then 9 interviews or profiles on each of the artist's interventions. This is my text on the exhibition itself, so it's a kind of curatorial text. And in this, I talk about some of the influences, how Any Given Sunday came about. Who, for example, the Fees Must Fall movement in 2015. And in fact, what's important here is that you can see some of the artists that were involved in Any Given Sunday also took part in the Fees Must Fall protests. Justin Davey, Stembile Mesizane, and others, and our photographer, Wandile Kasibe, who many of us know as well. But, it's the project was also very much based on who are we addressing with this project? Who do we make art for? And these are important questions that I've been dealing with for much of my life. And in 2001, 2002, I worked with this French activist artist called Ernest Pignot-Ernest. He was also an artist that curated the exhibition Art Against Apartheid, which for UNESCO, which toured to about 40 countries and was eventually donated to South Africa. And here we see an image from Soweto Warwick, as the project was later titled, in 2002, in and around Warwick Junction in Durban. So I worked very closely with Ernest Pignol. Ernest, I coordinated the project. I also suggested where the project should take place. So I suggested the Warwick Junction because I grew up there. It's where the market is. So as a kid, I was running around in these spaces. But it's also where 600,000 people pass through every day, taking the buses and the trains from the townships into the city. And his image was based on the Hector Peterson image, from June 16, 1976, by Sam Nzima. And you can see the image is quoted, the photo is quoted in the top left corner, but he made a drawing. This was about the AIDS crisis, and he made a drawing where the woman is actually carrying the man. So, signifying that the woman was taking over the household and supporting the households during the AIDS crisis in South Africa. But so this influenced me quite a lot in the project. And another artist that influenced me more local was Peter Clark. And here we have an image of Peter Clark, Fisherwoman and Child, 1960. What influenced me a lot about Peter Clark was, he was unacknowledged for most of his life, but he believed in himself, and he continued to make paintings and drawings and prints. He was really great at printmaking, and we see a gouache here as well. But he didn't make art for the art community. I think a lot of artists today are making art for the market and adapting their practice to suit the market. But Peter Clark, he made art for the community around him, first in Simonstown, and then later around Ocean View, where he was moved to with his family under the Group Areas Act. They were moved in 1970, and between 1970 and 1974, they were housed in interim housing, and in 1974, they were moved to Ocean View. And so Peter Clark was another inspiration on Any Given Sunday, just in terms of not seeking validation. He didn't make art to be validated by institutions. He made art for the community around him, for his family, for his friends, for the people of Ocean View and Simonstown. And in many ways, Peter Clark chronicled the kind of everyday moments in and around those areas. So this is what I was talking about. This is an installation photo from my exhibition in 1997 in Durban, my first and only solo exhibition that I had 2 years after graduating from Wits University. But I wanted to show this to you to show you that I had been thinking about these issues of who do we make art for long before Any Given Sunday. It was something that was quite strong in my practice, even in my painting practice. And I grew up in the township of Chatsworth, about 30 kilometers outside of Durban. And so my first exhibition of paintings was about living in Chatsworth and growing up there, and the architecture of apartheid, housing, etc. And I think what was very important for me was that, when I had my exhibition, it was the first time my parents visited an art gallery. So, and I'm not alone in this. I think many people who grow up in the townships are not regular visitors to art galleries and art museums. And this has got to do with the legacy of art not being taught in township schools, etc. But in my paintings, I was also trying to reach out to to those that my family, my friends, and the extended community. And that's why some of the socialist, realist artists around the world influenced my work, and also the pop art movement of the US in the 60s and 70s. These are quite large works. They're like 2.4 meters by 1.8 meters. And what was important about this is that I didn't want to alienate the audience that I was talking to, but also, the community that I was talking about, of which I came. I came from that same community that I was depicting in these paintings. And a lot of the discussions were about high and low art, naive art. And in this painting particularly, I wanted to celebrate what was called naive art, in the sense that it had something to teach high art in terms of spontaneity, etc. So that, I just wanted to give you a little glimpse about that, because similar to Peter Clark, I was also thinking about those same issues long before I met Peter Clark, and long before I met Ernest Pignon-Ernest in 2001 and 2002. So I think what we can say is that for each of us, people are at the center of our practice in terms of who we have in mind when we make art, and who we make art for. So then just going on to some of the other essays, this is by Richard Pithouse, who is a politics researcher at WISER. He's also editor of New Frame in Johannesburg. And Richard Pithouse takes us through the Fees Must Fall moment in 2015. At the time, Richard was a lecturer at Rhodes University, and he's since moved to Johannesburg, but he was very much following the Fees Must Fall and reporting on the Fees Must Fall as it was happening at that time. Richard was also part of the advisory committee. Both Richard Pithouse and Jay Pather and I were invited to the Mumbai conference in India in 2015. And so I decided to retain the team to keep the continuity of the project. And so they acted as advisors to my ideas. And there were often some raised eyebrows when I mentioned not inviting the audience and having random events around the city. Thanks to the Goodman Gallery for allowing us to use this photo by David Goldblatt. This is the moment when the statue of Rhodes, Cecil John Rhodes, was removed from UCT after the UCT Council took a decision to abide by the demands of the students. And we can have a closer look here. The top picture is by Wandile Kasibe, also the bottom one, of the students protesting. So Richard talks about, the movements and the developments, both in a positive and negative manner. And then Jay Pather takes us through 3 public art events in Cape Town. The one, of course, is in Infecting the City, which Jay Pather curates. And this is a performance by Ati Patraruga, which took place in the Long Street Baths, I think 2012. And many of you must know about Infecting the City. It's been happening annually. And so Jay Pather talks about some of the highlights of Infecting the City, and another project he was involved in called Land, which took place in 2013. And we see a photo by Harun Gansali at the top, which is a work that talks about District 6 and the removals, the forced removals of people from District 6, and the traces that remain and the memories. So dealing very much with the issues of District 6 and the trauma caused by it. And then at the bottom, we have Jackie Maniapello Waiting for the Rain, which was a performance that took place around the Prestridge Memorial in Strand Street. Jay also talks about Any Given Sunday, but so he gives a brief synopsis of some of the highlights of each of these 3 public art projects in Cape Town. Anthony Bogues, I've mentioned, who is a professor of African Studies at Brown University, who was also sometimes associated with University of Cape Town, but is now a fellow at the University of Johannesburg, while still being obviously a permanent staff member at Brown in the US. And I actually visited him there in 2011. Here, actually, this is a very, very interesting article, and I would recommend you all read it because it gives us an overview of the developments in African studies, in activism, not only in South Africa, but also things that were taking place in Paris in the 1930s, and some of the Pan-African festivals like Dakar and Algiers and Nigeria, which took place in 1977. So some of the Pan-African art festivals, and also 1982 in Botswana with the Naidoo Art Ensemble that organized a conference on art and activism. And Tony Bogues also talks about, he interviewed Gabrielle Goliath about her performance Elegy, which was part of Any Given Sunday. And he talks about that as well. And here is an image of the cover of the journal Présence Africaine, which took place in Paris in 1956, which was really, invited a lot of the intellectuals. Frantz Fanon was there. James Baldwin was writing about it. Many of the artists and writers from the Harlem Renaissance were also part of the conference, like Claude McKay, for example. So many of the Harlem Renaissance figures from the 20s in the USA, the Black writers, then had a link with Paris. They were frequent visitors. Paris was seen as quite an open place at that time. And I think I'll take you through very quickly through Thuli Gamedze's article, which she talks about Sunday, and how Sunday is a pause, a break for the working classes, where you're not constantly driven to work. It's a day of relaxation. And she talks about Any Given Sunday and the importance of these performances taking place on a Sunday when people, have a day off. So it's a time to switch off from the machine of capitalism. And very interesting article, very good writer, Thuli Gamedze. And she made the important point of, talking about the Koleka Putuma's performance on the train, and how people have the liberty to listen or not to listen, which is very different to being in a theater where Koleka Putuma often performs. I think the same can be said also for Gabrielle Goliath's Elegy. It's very different from performing it in a kind of theater environment where the spotlights are on you and everything else is darkened. So the spectators are not that important. They are in the dark. You command the attention. But in Any Given Sunday, when it's in the public space, it's very unpredictable. Anything can happen. People can look at you blankly. like sometimes happened on the train. And so, you know, artists have to also be adaptable to these changes. And that's not always easy because the artists are not always in control when it's taking place in the public space. I mean, it's interactive. The public is equally important. So there's a shift in power that happens when you go into the public space, because you're entering into other people's spaces, private spaces in the public. And that is a negotiation that is constantly shifting moment, you know, from one moment to the next. Stembile Mesizane. So these are photos that accompany that article. And then the last of the commissioned essays was by Uzma Rizvi, who was a discussant in Zurich. And so Uzma had also invited me to talk about the project in Dubai. I gave a workshop there, which was pretty much about 6 hours. And Uzma writes very articulately about all of the performances. And there's a really nice long part of the essay that talks about the women artists involved in the project and their activism as women artists, and, you know, wanting or taking the visibility to the audiences. This is from Madusini's impromptu performance in Langa, and Gerald Machona and Pak Mena in the textile factory, and Hassan and Hussein Esop. These are photos from their previous performance that were included in the video because it dealt with the same theme of Ramadan and of Eid. And Zanele Maoli's performance, some of her images around the Cape Town train station. So, Robert, maybe I'll just pause there for a moment, because those are the commissioned essays. The rest of the texts deal with each of the performances by the artists, and I can talk about that. But if you want to pose some questions, or if there's some questions from the audience, maybe we can discuss them briefly now, if you want.
Yes, sure. I do have 2 questions at the moment, and then I think, like you say, we can continue on with the rest. The first being, how did you actually come about to work with the 9 artists? You know, did you choose them specifically? How did it actually happen that you came about that choice?
Okay, I'll answer that one then first. I was working around the theme of artists that were making work about things happening around South Africa. So artists that were socially engaged. So in a way, it's a kind of activism, we can say. There's a kind of activism in the artwork, speaking about many different issues. For example, with Gabriel Goliath, it's about, you know, the violence and rape of women. With Hassan and Hussein Esop, it's about visibility, bringing more visibility to the Cape Town's Muslim community. You know, Madusini's, many people ask me, why is Madusini in Any Given Sunday? Because she's a musician, and you know, but I think Madusini for me is a link to a more dignified and ancient indigenous past in South Africa. And that is something that I think we are all seeking in terms of, or many of the artists are seeking in this project, is a dignity, for us all to be recognized as, in our own humanity. As Tembele Mesizane, for example, talks about the absence of Black women figures in the public sculptures around the country, almost 30 years into the new democracy. So many of these, Zanele Moholi needs no introduction. We know Zanele Moholi's work and talking, bringing visibility to the subject of Black lesbians in the country. And now she's taking that, even further. Burning Museum's focus was on Afrikaans language and this relationship between Afrikaans and the Arabic script, where we saw some of the first instances of Afrikaans being written in Arabic script in the 19th century in some of the madrasas in Cape Town. And, Gerald Machona, who was dealing with issues of xenophobia, himself a Black African from Zimbabwe. So, these are issues that were close to his own personal experience. And for that performance, he worked with Pak and Jamina, who was a choreographer who came over from Mozambique. Koleka Putuma's body of poetry deals with, tackling some of the issues of the day, the failures of the current government, the expectations, the ideas of the Rainbow Nation and the TRC, and also dealing with personal issues, her own love life, sexuality. So in many ways, most of the artists are dealing with issues that affect us all, but also issues that are more personal in many ways, that touch them some way or another in their personal lives, but has a greater impact in the country. Xenophobia, for example, we've seen the devastating effects of xenophobia in 2008 in South Africa. So does that help in?
Yes, yeah, I think that answers that question nicely. Thank you, Riason. I've got another one here, which is a question about the AGS publication format. Sorry for the background noises there. So the AGS publication format, why is it in this sort of newspaper type of format? What informed that choice? And yeah, if you can tell us just a bit more about that.
Thanks. These are great questions, by the way. Robin, are they coming from the audience or are they coming from you?
Me and the audience, yes.
Okay. So, Any Given Sunday is about taking art to a broader public than just the art-going audience. So for the publication, I wanted the publication to be in keeping with that idea. And, this is an exhibition catalog. Make no mistake about that. There's a lot of text. Each of the invited texts is about 3,000 words. And then, so there's 6 of that. So that's 18,000 words. And then we have 9 texts on each of the artists, which is around 1,300 words each. So that's, almost another 12,000 words. So this is a 30,000 word exhibition catalog. And I could have done this in a conventional format, but I'm always trying to do things a little bit differently, like, so if I weigh up an exhibition catalog, I might only be able to print 1,000, and who is going to read that, right? And over what period of time? So often, someone would, an institution would print 1,000 copies of an exhibition catalog, like I did with a previous project, the Indian in Drum magazine, which has been sold out for some time now. But who does the catalog reach? So with this format, this publication came out last Friday on the 21st of January, and then was inserted as a supplement in the Mail and Guardian in the Western Cape. So it reached already 6,000 people just in the Western Cape through the Mail and Guardian. And now we have some additional copies that we ordered to accompany the exhibition and to make it more accessible. The idea is really accessibility. It's to make the information available. The PDF is also going to be available freely for download for people who are not in Cape Town. So it's really not to be exclusive. The idea is, we're generating new content here. There's new knowledge, there's new information, and it's to be shared. So this is the idea behind the tabloid format of the publication, and to take these ideas about art, about the artists, about the interpretations to a wider audience. I mean, you don't need to have an art degree to be able to read these articles and to be able to understand what is going on. So that is really the essence of the format and why I chose to go this way.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's actually so fitting that it's not the format that we've come to expect from, an art publication. It's more of the glossy coffee book type of thing. And like you said, you could have made 1,000 copies that would have sat on beautiful coffee tables in gorgeous homes around Cape Town, very probably, which is wonderful to have. But at the end of the day, who, like you asked, who is reading that, and what's the accessibility to that type of quite expensive item? So yeah, it's wonderful to see that you've chosen this unusual format, a format that I think people also feel more at ease with handling. So you've got a newspaper format where if somebody stuffs it in between some of the other books or whatever and takes it with them, or stuffs it in their handbag, they can make notes on it. They could even cut it up, collage it into something else. So it's just really a fun format as well that I think you've chosen, which really rounds off the type of project and its origins. Just on the publication, a bit of a practical question that came through was, where will it be available in hard copy and online? If you can just quickly answer that. And then I've got another one more meaty question.
Yeah, so the publication is now available at the Rupert Museum, so people can go and get a copy there. And for today only, you can get a copy free if you visit the Rupert Museum. So I'm told, Robin.
Yes, thanks for noting that.
And thereafter, so it will be available at the Rupert Museum until the end of February, and perhaps even longer in the bookshop. And there will be a launch of the publication at the Cape Town Art Fair during the, between 18 and 21 February. You'll have to follow the Cape Town Art Fair website and program for that, but I will also share those details with the Rupert Museum so that they can share it on their Facebook page. And please also check the Any Given Sunday Facebook page, because that's where it will also be posted. And then, of course, you know, we might try and get the publication to some of the bookshops in Cape Town, like Clark's, etc. And I want to have some conversations with the fine art schools, like perhaps in Stellenbosch and UCT and places like that, where we can try and make the publication available for a, you know, a reduced price. And you can go to the Mail and Guardian website, and the publication will be there. If you hang on to the presentation, I will share that link with you, so you can actually already get the publication online. It is already online, and you can download it free of charge. So, Robin, if you would just remind me of that. In fact, maybe I can just go there right now.
You can do that.
If you are on the screen, everybody. I'll just take you to the Mail and Guardian. Let's try and. Okay, there we go. So this is the link. So it's Mail and Guardian, special reports, any given Sunday. And you'll see the publication is there. And you can go to the top right corner here and download. So that allows you a free download if you're not able to come into the museum. And, you know, you can actually just also flip through the publication, but it's freely available. The idea was not to, you know, the publication is not a commercial interest. It's to make the information available. But at the same time, I also want people to, you know, to appreciate that it is a publication, that it's taken a long time to put together, that people have put a lot of energy, not only me, but the people that have contributed to it, and the artists that gave their time. So you can go to, here is the link at the top, and I will perhaps also, you know, keep that link somewhere at the end. Maybe I'll do that here.
Thanks.
Yeah, okay, and you got one more question, perhaps?
Yeah, so this is also, it's the last one, it's from the audience. Noticing some text on artists does not include Q&A. Was that due to artist availability or contact, or just to have a mix of curated text and then artist interviews?
Yeah, thank you. That's also a very good question. In fact, there are 5 Q&As in the publication with the artists. I'm just reminding myself, right? So I'm just getting out of that. So there are 5 Q&As, and those are with Stembile Mesizane, Buhle. It's with the Aesop twins. It's with Madusini, which was translated from Xhosa. So that was done with the assistance of Pedro, I gave the questions, you know, I wrote the questions and sent him the questions via email, and he had some assistance and did the interview via WhatsApp, because Madusini was in the Eastern Cape, and they sent me the interview, and I you know, I asked Wandile Kasibe to, so we can just check that page. to translate the interview. So it was quite an interesting process of, you know, doing this interview with Madhusini and, you know, doing it in Xhosa and then translating it into English and doing it over WhatsApp via a third party. And, you know, everybody has been credited for that in the publication. But it was, and I think it's one of the more beautiful interviews in the publication. So Phumza Madhusini was also involved in the process. She asked the questions in Xhosa with Pedro via WhatsApp, and they sent me the sound recording via WhatsApp, and I asked Wandile Kasibe to translate it into English. And that's how we produced that, you know, that interview. And some of the artists were not available. Gabriel Goliath's texts was something, Gabriel Goliath asked me to write something on elegy way back in 2016. And I wrote a description of, you know, my first hearing and experiencing elegy at the Goodman Gallery. I think it was in October 2015. And then she presented elegy in Zurich and talked about elegy and correspondence with Christine's dad that she was in touch with at the time. So these were included. So I actually wrote the text because I think Gabriel was quite busy at the time. And with Zanele and Gerald Machona, as I've not been able to reach him for some time. He seems to be off electronic channels, probably detoxing from Facebook and Instagram, etc. And Koleka Putuma also was not able to reach. So I had to write text based on my experience of each of these interventions. And it was not something I could ask someone else to do because I was the common denominator in all of these interventions with the artists. So that sometimes it was just the artist and me and the cameraman that was present at these interventions, because it wasn't announced in advance. It was just the artist and myself that knew when the intervention was going to take place and where, except of course, in the case of Gabriel Goliath, because it had to be done in a church and it was done after the service. So the people that attended the church service did not know that there was going to be a performance afterwards. It was just the people that run the church that were in the know. And also Gerald Machona's performance at the textile factory, we had to organize that it was going to be shown during the lunch break. So that was kind of pre-organized, you know, and with the kind of owners of the factory and the managers of the textile factory. And the workers knew that, okay, there was going to be something taking place during the lunch break. But for all the others, they were very random, spontaneous events that took place in and around Cape Town. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, yes. Thank you very much.
So is there anything else? Because I think we've got about 4 minutes.
I don't have any other questions now. That seems to be the last.
Okay. And then, yeah, so, I mean, we've already answered something about why some are Q&A and some are, you know, are texts on the artist interventions. But I think, in a way, I think it's quite nice because it adds some diversity in that they're all not interviews. So we got 5 interviews. We've got 3 kind of descriptive texts on Zanele Mahole, on Koleka, Putuma, and on Gerald, Machona. And Gabriel Goliath's text is a kind of, it's different to both of those because it's a kind of recollection from Gabriel's point of view, and also my interpretation and experience of first seeing Elegy at the Goodman Gallery in Cape Town in 2015. But I can just quickly take you through that visually, and many of you will soon see the publication in the gallery. And so we can see, you know, from Gabriel Goliath's page 16, and then we got Hassan and Hussein Essep, and some close-ups there, Madosini, Stembile Mesazane. That's also a very nice interview with Stembile. Read that if you have a chance. Zanele Mahole, Birding Museum. And today's performance with Garth Erasmus is a link with Any Given Sunday, because Garth Erasmus participated in Strat Pride Keys Yomasa Tau with Reza Kota, another musician. And so the link of today's performance, you can see actually Garth Erasmus here on the extreme left. And Gerald Machona, Koleka Putuma. And Buhle. And now you have the link if you want to download the publication and if you want to have an electronic version. But what I want to just quickly say is that if you want to look at the videos, you can see them on the draft page. So draftprojects.info, and then go to Cape Town, for example. Oh, this is the, are we live here? Yes, okay. And then, you know, if you want to know more about Madosini, so you can click on that. So there's a description of Madosini, and if you know, each of them has like video documentation or photographs. So it takes you to the videos and the photos. You know, for those of you who want to know more about Any Given Sunday, it's all well documented on the draft website. And just to give you an example, right? But I won't go through that. But and Robin, just to say, I know that you've done some performances at the Rupert with Madosini, etc. Will that be going onto your Facebook pages and websites? And
yes, we did some sort of records of what was happening, so we'll be able to put some of that up. Yeah, and we're looking to do one more as well, so you'll see and hear more of that through our Facebook page and website and so on. Which will be the last of the performances related to the Any Given Sunday exhibition with us. So yeah, I hope that people will continue to enjoy it through those platforms.
okay, great. So here I'm just looking at Burning Museum, for example, and we can see Garth Erasmus there, and there they are here playing the music at the bottom. So all of the photos and the videos are on the draft website under Cape Town, under events. So, please feel free to check it out. All the videos are there. For example, you just click on the video documentation and so each of the artist interventions is on the website. So please make use of it, feel free. There's also the Any Given Sunday Facebook page, Any Given Sunday Cape Town. Oops, sorry. Just to give you a preview of what you're going to be listening to shortly in the museum. So that background music that you're listening to is by Garth Erasmus and Riza Kota. I must say, this was a beautiful project for me to work on. It was really inspiring to work with all these artists, and it, renewed my faith in art, actually. I think it's also nice to work independently outside of institutions sometimes, and to have the freedom to, to do what I want. And this was one of those opportunities with Any Given Sunday. So thank you very much to the Rupert also for extending the life of Any Given Sunday. And I see that there is some interest from other galleries and museums around the country. So I hope that Any Given Sunday, that the one that we did with the Rupert Museum can travel to some other spaces around the country.
Sure. Yeah, I'm really hoping for that as well. I think we just continue this conversation in the form of us art museums being involved. But what's so wonderful about the project is the many different ways that you can access what's happened, and what's still happening in terms of how the conversation continues, how the concept has grown with Niftoir now, and what's happened after the Niftoir in Paris. So yeah, it's really of the now in the way it's been constructed, which is almost not constructed, but allowing the most accessible platforms to guide how the project is manifested. So I really enjoy that about this particular exhibition. It's very much a hard left or hard right or hard, different route entirely compared to what we experience in our normal work at the museum, where it's very structured and there are very specific ways of capturing an exhibition, of continuing to have a life for that exhibition, like through a catalogue, through academic papers and so on. And it can be quite one-dimensional, whereas this particular project has shown to be representative in those avenues as well as in so many of the others that I think particularly young people would be quite keen on getting involved in and understanding. So yeah, I really want to thank you for taking us through the ads publication today and a bit of its background as well as your own and how it's informed that project itself, because it's been so insightful and informative that it wasn't just to talk through it, but you actually gave at certain key points, you gave quite a bit of background and insider kind of information as to how those things came about. So I think this little talk has been kind of the crib notes. If anybody out there is using this material in their own research or in whichever way, it's a nice little nugget where they can get all the information almost in one place about the Any Given Sunday project and concept. So thank you very much for that. I don't have any further questions, and we have done time now, just a few minutes over. So yes, I hope that the visitors that are listening in our first gallery will be able to enjoy Garth Erasmus and the rest of the program for the day. But yes, that's the sign off from us for this particular talk with you, Riason. Thanks.
Great, and enjoy the rest of the museum day. And I will be in Cape Town soon, in about 2 weeks' time. So hopefully I will get to see you all very soon.
Wonderful, fantastic. Thanks very much. and I'll sign off. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, cheers.